Good afternoon, everyone. This is Professor Hill. It's a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics, Philosophy 2306 here at St. Philip's College for the Maymester of 2024. And today is Tuesday, May the 21st, 2024. And we're still at the beginning of our second week in our intensive, short, compressed Maymester class. And we had assignments that were due last night at midnight. The homework was due last night. I had a chance to go through everything this morning. I'm making comments and grading and sending people messages. It's about 1:30 now, and so I've got that finally all wrapped up. But the good news is that there's lots of good news about this. People have figured out the process and what we're doing. They read chapter 2, applied it to the case study about John the paramedic. People, as you may have noticed, some people had some pretty strong reactions to it, which makes sense. But they were well written. Some people wrote a lot, and as a whole, the class did very well. So I'm very pleased with the essays. Also, with again just the logistics in terms of compliance. Everybody commented on at least 2. Some people, were a little riled up and commented on 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and that's fine. Again, the back and forth is always interesting and good. So that was welcome. People, as long as people are doing it in a respectful way, disagreeing, but, within the confines of respectful dialogue within a course. So that was, people also, mostly held to that too. So that was good. So anyway, it turns out they were due last night at midnight. They're now graded, and we're on to the next thing. Couple of good important points here. We did chapter 1, wrote the first essay. Did chapter 2, wrote the second essay. Now we're going to skip chapter 3. So bright lights flashing. Go straight to chapter 4. Read chapter 4 to prepare for this case study, which is due Friday, the 24th. That way, at least, maybe you'll have a little break over the weekend. But Friday, that's the 4-day. That's the longest we can stretch these things out. So the student's cartoon is the next case study. We're going to read chapter 4 and then do the third essay. That'll be due Friday night, the 24th at midnight. And then I'll grade those things on Saturday. Again, just because it's such a short, compressed thing, I want to make sure that you're always getting quick feedback as you're shaping your next, you're reading the next thing, the next chapter, and then shaping your thoughts for the next case study, the essay. All right, so a couple of quick comments. In terms of the logistics, how we're doing this, people got that. Read the chapter, applied it to the essay, brought in a concept. People were good about that, a key term or definition, and applied it to the case study. They submitted their essays. That's always the first thing you do. And then commented on at least 2. So we got that down. In terms of some of the key concepts, the one thing I'll mention that was kind of the biggest problem that people ran into was they kind of quickly read emotivism, and then rather than focusing on the context and the definition and how it fit, just kind of assumed that meant emotions and making difficult ethical decisions based on your emotions. That is not what that means. It sounds like it because the word is emotivism, but it's not. It's the person that basically says that there isn't right and wrong. There is not good and bad. And the way that the name gets attached to that concept is that people then ask the person who says, oh, no, there's no such thing as good or bad, right and wrong. So, well, what do you think's going on over here when people are having this discussion about right and wrong, good and bad? They seem to think it means something and is a real thing. And no, those people are wrongly just exerting emotions. And it's not that there is good and bad, right and wrong. It's just people get upset about some of these things. And so That's where the name comes from. It's again, I would give it a different name because it is too confusing. Because people think it means, oh, I'm basing my decision on my emotions, and that's kind of not what that means. But apart from that, most people got that moral objectivism is about believing in principles that are objectively true, and it's our job just to kind of discover them and then apply them in our lives. And people pretty much again got the cultural piece that my beliefs about good and bad, right and wrong, I have them. I think there are things that are good and bad, right and wrong, and that they've been shaped by and reflect my culture and my cultural's values, and that, like language, these things arise from our cultures, which is why they're different from place to place. And like I said, people pulled out most of the good, key, important ideas from chapter 2 and applied them. And with the one exception of emotivism, which a couple of people got wrong, people did, on the whole, did really well. So I'm extraordinarily pleased about the average of the whole class. So on to the next thing, which is the student's cartoon. Like the John the Paramedic story, it's another true story. And so again, this is not, academic or fictional or made up to prove a point. Those stories have their place. We're going to talk a little bit later about the trolley problem, which is a fictional story made up to kind of push people around and think about different concepts and ideas. But this case study for this week, due Friday night, is a true story. And one of the threshold questions you'll see is simply, is there really a threat to the professor? Should the professor have reported this because there was a threat? Or should the professor have just gone, this is nothing, and, just moved on? I don't know, because it does present this problem to the dean who gets this case and who really thinks there's not a problem because there hasn't really been a threat, but is under a lot of pressure to give some kind of penalty to the student. So just remember this, as you're going into the chapter 4, not 3, 4, and you're looking at this case study, think to yourself about the way this should work. In our criminal system, there's a trial, and then you're found, guilty or not guilty. And if you're found guilty, then you get a punishment that we think hopefully fits and is appropriate and serves justice in terms of a punishment for that guilty finding. And the same thing is true with academics and higher education and universities. It's not a legal process, it's an administrative process. And so you may be found in violation of the code of student conduct. And if you are found in violation of that code, you might then get a sanction that reflects what we think is an appropriate response and punishment or sanction for that violation of the code. But, if you don't think there's been a violation of the code, there shouldn't be a sanction, right? Because there's, anyway. And then also I want you to think of the one last point when you get to the case study is also the whole role of zero tolerance policies. Do they make sense? Are they good deterrents? Is there justice in having a zero tolerance policy? And for what types of things? Where in our society do we have zero tolerance policies and why? And again, a zero tolerance policy just means if you're found guilty of a crime, if you're found in violation of a code, then, that's it. There's not going to be gradations of punishment or warnings or, written reprimands or a fine or whatever else. In In a college or university situation, a zero tolerance policy means if you found that you violated it, then you're out, you're expelled. That's it's the most severe punishment for any even small violations of a code. I'm not sure that makes sense, but some places have implemented these things. They'll have like a zero tolerance policy for drugs, and then what happens is somebody has a bottle of Advil roll out of their purse, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's a drug," and so you're expelled. And people are like, "Whoa, whoa!" She had some aspirin in her purse, and now she's getting kicked out of school. And they're like, "Yes, zero tolerance policy. We don't care about nuance or circumstances or relativism in terms of what factors are applied that give it some context. We don't care about that. It's just a rule and a punishment. Out you go." Now, part of the thinking of that is it's a reflection of our institutional values. We don't want to have any drugs here. And if we put in place this punishment, then no one would ever dream of violating the sanctions because the penalty is so great, it'll ensure that it never happens. And because we want to make sure it never happens, and that's a high value to us, then, we're going to have this zero tolerance policy. They're shockingly common. And sometimes it strikes people that justice isn't being served by the kind of automatic application of this absolutism around the policies. But I want to hear what you think about that. Can it be helpful? What do you think? Let me know. All right. By the way, in terms of the last case, the John the Paramedic story, I had a couple of students ask me what I thought about it and where I came down on that. And I've made videos in the past that are online, and I think even ones that I posted for the discussion for this last week, over the weekend, included me saying that I did think applied ethics applied. I think he had an obligation to fulfill his duty as a paramedic, and that his decision was wrong. And I think there's several reasons to support that. Although, again, as you saw, there were people that would disagree with me and thought that what John did was defensible. And I remember one of the first, when I was teaching this not online, but in a classroom, I had a student who asked me what I thought. I said that very thing. I think what he did was wrong. He should have treated him. It was a case of applied ethics. He should have followed the rules. And she really reacted very strongly and said, "No, you're wrong. What he did was completely justifiable. And the only reason you don't think so is because you don't understand what it's like to be raped. And because you're not a woman and you don't understand what was happening in this situation, you've got this wrong." And I was like, wow, okay. Now, when a student, especially a student in a classroom full of other students, responds like that, my first thought is, okay, I need to have a reaction that takes into account her perspective and her viewpoint, because something has obviously very traumatically happened to this person. And so I tried to respond in a very kind of pastoral way, which gets complicated when you're in front of other people in a classroom like that. But I didn't want to also just say, well, see me after class and we'll talk. And so I did kind of have to start by saying, hey, listen, sounds like you've been, you've got skin in the game on this one. You've been hurt. You know someone who's been hurt. That your experience has shaped your viewpoint on this. And you're right. My viewpoint is very different than yours. Obviously, my experience is very different than yours. But I don't think that necessarily means that you can have this kind of ad hominem attack, meaning to the person. And that type of argument is against the person, not their argument that they're making or the reasoning that they're following. I said, I think I'm laying out a pretty good reason why John was wrong. And while you're correct, I'm male. I've never been a victim of sexual assault, although obviously that can also happen to men. I said, I did want to start with kind of a soft approach to her and say, I didn't want to attack her back. I wanted to kind of take into account that, wow, it sounds like something really terrible has shaped her experience, either personally or to a close friend or something. And that was a difficult conversation. And I did follow up with her afterwards, after class. It turns out one of the things they ask instructors to do is, to follow up with students, especially ones who might need some type of professional assistance or counseling or other kind of thing, other services that the college can offer to help. And I did do that, but it was, it's tough. It's tricky. I didn't want to also just kind of have this paternalistic or patronizing attitude of, oh, I see your opinion is based on, an assumption that you've been hurt and that's why. And it's essentially doing to her what she did to me, this kind of ad hominem approach. So I had to balance that with, hey, maybe there are services or help or, things that we can provide to her as a community. So it's tricky stuff. And as you saw, even just in the discussions, people disagree on this. And I like I said, I had posted some of the long explanation about this in the videos. I hope they're helpful to you. All right, switching back to where we go next. Discussion number 3, the student's cartoon, due Friday, the 24th, midnight. Read chapter 4, look at the case study. It's one of these things which might be more complicated than you think. So spend some time on it, think your way through it, apply a lesson or 2 or 3 from the chapter, and let me know if you need any help or any guidance or anything else. Like I said, as a whole, everybody's doing quite well. So keep up the good work. People are making it happen. All right, take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to y'all again soon. Bye.